Yo, what's up, gamers? So I saw a lot of indie dev channels on YouTube doing basically a make a game in 1 hour challenge, and I thought that seemed really fun, so here's my attempt at making a game in 1 hour. I start my timer, and the very first thing I do is set up these player character sprites. Now, before I started the challenge, I went and got some pre-made art assets from Kenney. He is an art asset creator who makes a lot of great stuff, and I went and pulled one that I thought looked pretty cute, and I just pulled it in to get to work. When I looked at the sprite, I immediately had the thought of making some kind of like infinite runner game where this Game Boy character has to dodge like spikes and stuff and maybe jump between aisles or something, but I didn't really do any planning beyond that. So you can see the very first thing I do is start setting up the animations for running and jumping and sliding using the different pieces of the character sprite sheet. And then I quickly copy over a stretch and squash script that I use in all my projects for animations, but because I was trying to go too quickly, I accidentally copied an edited version of the script from a different project instead of my generic version that I keep in a different folder. So that immediately has some like build errors, and I need to go and edit it out and delete a bunch of stuff to get it working. I probably should have just went and copied over the correct one, but for some reason in the moment I thought this would be faster. You can see the results of the script here. It looks a little bit funky. That's not exactly how you'd expect it to move, and that's because I didn't plug in all the settings correctly for the character sprite. I had the height wrong as well as the squash and stretch factors wrong, but I figured it out, got it all fixed, and now you can see the result of my squash and stretch on screen right here. Now, I always use this script to make my character animation look a lot better because I think it adds a lot of life to the 2D character sprites, but in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have done this because it ended up taking like more than 6 minutes, which is like 10% of the total development time, and that's probably not worth it to make the character look a little bit extra squishy. But hindsight analysis aside, I then immediately get to work making the ground sprites and getting it set up so that the character has something to run along. I pulled in the assets and got them tiling, and then I needed to make it so it moved. Now, I had to jump into the documentation here as I was working because the Rect 2D of Godot wasn't working exactly as I expected, and it took me a little while to read through it all and figure out what exactly the problem was, so it ended up eating a pretty good chunk of time as well. And eating into all this time, I end up finishing the ground piece with about 20 minutes spent, so like a third of my total time is gone. I almost just stopped here to move on and try again because I had already wasted so much time setting up very, very basic stuff, and I realized that I probably should have gone in with way more of a plan instead of just like, oh, let's see how it works. But I decided to just stick with it and see what the result would be, even though I ended up wasting a bunch of time at the start. So I get to work setting up the player states and controls with like a basic slide and jump for dodging the obstacles. I play around with the specifics of the jump and the slide and the details of that for a while until it feels good enough for me to move on. Probably another thing I wasted a little bit of time on, but I get it all hooked up to the actual player controls, and now the player is moving and sliding and jumping, and you can see what that looks like here. Now I've got about half the time remaining, and I have a character that you can control, but there's really no gameplay. So I start setting up the player collision so that we can add obstacles. The first thing I do here is set up a hitbox for running and jumping, and then a separate sliding hitbox that I can switch between based on whatever the player is currently doing. And then I jump into the code to actually implement that switching behavior. And now that I have the character hitboxes all hooked up, I start creating the obstacles that the character actually needs to avoid to play the game. The obstacles I had in mind from looking at the asset pack were a little pair of spikes sticking out of the ground, and then like a saw floating in the air, where you have to jump over the spikes and slide underneath the saw. I pull in the spikes and get a node set up that can drag it across the ground, and then I give it a hitbox so that it has a way to interact with the player, and then I duplicate that obstacle but using the saw asset. I wanted to add a rotation script to the saw to make it look more like a saw, but I just completely forgot, because in these kind of challenges there's a lot of things you got to keep track of in your head, and you don't have any time to really stop and think. But once I get the two different obstacle types set up, I create an obstacle spawner node, and then I feed it the two different obstacles that I created, and then I have it randomly spawn one or the other. It basically simulates a coin flip, and it's a 50-50 chance for each obstacle. And with that obstacle spawner created, we have the basic functionality. We just need to actually determine what happens when the player collides with one of those obstacles. So with about 15 minutes left, I start setting up a game over state, and then I pause to think for a while on what exactly I want it to do when it reaches the game over state, and I decided that we can just straight up restart the game. I was tempted to make like a title screen that it throws you back to, or the game's paused and you need to press R to restart once you die, but that would have required a lot more time to implement than I thought I had, so I just made it restart the game whenever you die. Now, the game doesn't speed up at all. There's no difficulty ramping. So for one, you can just keep going forever, and for two, when you die, it doesn't really feel like anything happens because it restarts the game, but it's running at exactly the same speed, so you don't really notice a difference. So the next thing I need to add is the actual game design bit, and with only 10 minutes left, I'm cutting it pretty close because I need to add ramping difficulty on both the number of obstacles that spawn and how fast the map moves. And right now, all the movement is hard-coded in. I used magic numbers instead of actually defining the move speed for the ground or the obstacles or anything at all. So I got a lot of work to do in these last 10 minutes to make the game actually playable. So I define a game state that everything can reference, which stores what like the current difficulty level is basically, basically, and then I went and edited all my previous scripts to use that game state difficulty level, which I called game speed, to determine how often to spawn the obstacles and how quickly the obstacles should move. One thing I should have done is also made the duration of the jump and the slide decrease as the game speed increases so that you actually can react fast enough to dodge things. Because right now, the jump and the slide both take 0.8 seconds to complete. So once the game is moving fast enough that you would have to react in less than 0.8 seconds to successfully dodge, you cannot do it because you will still be in the sliding or jumping animation and you can't put in the next input to dodge the next obstacle. But it does force the game to stop at a point, which is good enough at least. So in these final minutes, I'm just playtesting, making sure it actually speeds up, making sure everything works, and it's pretty fun. I actually quite like this. I would need to do some more game design to actually get it feeling really good, because right now it's very basic, but even though it's very basic, it feels really fun to play. I just like these kind of infinite runner games, and this scratches an itch. So with less than 2 minutes left, I decided to try and implement a parallaxing sky in the background. So I quickly scrubbed through the assets, just pulling out something blue and seeing if it works as a sky. The first one I pulled out was just a blue block, so the second one was actually like a sky texture, and then I set it up as a region, attach a script to it, and copy over the same ground behavior, and then I just make the sky move at a slower pace than the ground, so it creates like almost a parallaxing background effect, and I managed to get that parallaxing background in at exactly 0 seconds left, so got it right in at the buzzer. And now here you can check out me playing the finished version of the game. I think I made a lot of simple mistakes with this project. I mean, I wasted almost the first 20 minutes of my hour fixing bugs that I probably shouldn't have even been working with in the first place, and I also spent a lot of time fiddling with the assets that I imported, but I really like working with the assets because it means I didn't need to think about the art at all. I just need to get the functionality working. And even though I wasted those first 20 minutes and went in completely blind without a plan at all, I think the end result is pretty fun. While working on this video, I keep getting distracted playing the game because I keep wanting to get just a little bit further, even though I know it's impossible. So overall, I think that the game turned out pretty fun. It's no different from those endless runners, and it's missing a lot of the features that they have, but I didn't really expect to do anything more than this in that 1 hour. I'd love to try this challenge again where I go in with way more of a plan and don't waste time on unnecessary features, but overall, I'm pretty happy with what I did. So I think I'll probably attempt this challenge again, and maybe do a 2-hour challenge, 3-hour challenge, 30-minute challenge. Those kind of things are really fun, and they allow me to create something in a short time frame just so I get those juices flowing, you know? Maybe I'll pull a different asset pack from Kenney or something, I don't know. Subscribe to my channel so you can see when I post those videos in the future, because I'm planning on making more of them. And also, thank you for watching the video. Hit it with a like, leave a comment, do all that good stuff. I'm making a YouTube video, so I'm actually legally obligated to end my video by saying that. Google will actually send trained assassins to my home if I do not. So yeah, bye.